Now we'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording process is posted in the meeting room. Participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Wilkin.
Present.
Beck.
Here.
Camford. Miller.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Hendrick. Here.
The first item this evening is consideration of approval of draft minutes of March 19, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin. Beck. Miller. Singleton. Schmidt. Hendrick. Motion carried.
Next, we have the consent agenda of items 2 and 3.
Move to approve.
Second.
The motion is second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin. Beck. Miller. Singleton. Schmidt. Hendrick. Motion carried.
Next, we have is confirmation of mayor's appointment. Confirmation of mayor's appointment of Jessica Coltman as council member of Ward 1 to replace resigned Councilmember Dean Fritz. Just want to talk a little bit about the process. I've done this a couple times before with vacancies on the council. Basically, once a council member submits their resignation letter to the council, it triggers a 4-week period where the mayor has to appoint someone to the council. The last meeting 2 weeks ago was when Councilmember Fritz had presented his letter to the council, and then at that point we published notice to the public that there's a vacancy and asked for applications. We received 3 applications during that time, and at this point I am appointing Jessica Colterman to fill Dean's spot on the council. Does the council have any questions or comments about the process, or I know Jessica is here if you have any questions for her as well. Yes, Chris.
I'm gonna move to approve Jessica to Dean's seat. I mean, Jessica's been to council a lot, she's here a lot, we see her face a lot, we know who she is, she's involved in other things on the city side. I think it'd be a good appointment.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Saying none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin. Beck. Miller. Singleton. Schmidt. Opposed. Hendrick.
All
Motion
right,
carried.
congratulations. We do the oath of office now?
Yes.
Do you want to come up, Jessica?
Oath of office, so you can stand and raise your right hand and I will read that. You do not have to. Do you, Jessica Colterman, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Nebraska, and the ordinances of the City of Seward, Nebraska, against all enemies, foreign and domestic? That you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely and without mental reservation or for purpose of evasion, that you will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of council member from Ward 1 for the City of Seward, Nebraska, according to law and to the best of your ability. And do you further swear that you do not advocate nor are a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence, and that during such time as you are in this position, you will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence, so help me God. Will you sign there, please?
And so like we've done in the past, we have the confirmation of mayor's appointments to various boards and committees. Particularly Donna is the new board, the new council member would just take the position held by the previous member. If in the future you would like to move things around, let me know. We can have that conversation. Did you want to add anything, Greg?
We're gonna do that tonight, just for one potential.
Okay.
We had a previous liaison issue with the library board, and so I wanted to see if council member Hendricks would be willing to serve on the tree board, which doesn't meet very often.
Sounds great.
And then, because she has a conflict on the direct time in the afternoon every time for the library board, and it just will not work. And then we would move to appoint Councilmember Hendricks as the liaison to the tree board, and then at this time, move to appoint Councilman Coulterman to the remaining three, which is E911, Seward Foundation, and Library Board.
So we'll do these each separate. First item is liaison appointment to the tree board, which would be Alyssa.
Move to approve.
You're looking at big eyes, I thought maybe.
I just heard my name.
Okay.
So like,
Good
I can't
motion and a
really-
second.
I can't really do anything. I just,
We good?
yeah,
Please,
great.
please register your votes, please display the votes.
Oh, you're not voting?
Am I supposed to, like, for myself?
Yeah. that's
We let you.
Okay.
You get a free vote.
You don't have to vote?
I did.
Oh. Not show up?
Push it up.
Just
It's
move it.
up. I pushed it
Oh,
up.
sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at Camp Rep, it's blank, so, are we ready?
Yes.
Sorry.
Are you good?
Voting in favor, Wilkenbeck, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carried.
Alright, second one is E911 board. It would be to appoint Jessica to term that runs with the election.
So,
Second.
Motion and second, please register your votes, please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkenbeck, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carried.
Next we have for Jessica is the Seward Foundation for a 1-year term.
Move to approve.
second.
Motion and second, please register your votes, please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkenbeck, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carried.
And finally, we have liaison to the library board.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and second, please register your votes,
I'm sorry, who's Singleton, who's second?
Carl did.
Carl, thank you.
please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkenbeck, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carried.
Thank you. Next, we have administrative items, consideration of an agreement with JEO Consulting Group Incorporated to prepare a topographic survey of Hillcrest Drive. Greg?
Yes, you have three in the row here technically. These were put together by city engineer Jake Basha. The first one is in regards to getting a topo for Hillcrest Drive. This will be the project that is built out, and we're scheduled based on the 1 and 6 year plan to build from basically Eastridge sort of down to the bridge. And so that will connect into the proposed Carroll K project, and this is what will give Jake what he needs to get started on the engineering.
Any questions on that? Yes.
Is this, what part of this is it, like, we're talking about the road, right?
Yep.
Just the asphalt part?
So the whole, I mean, to design it for
Gotcha.
all phases,
Okay.
so. Cause there's also discussion, I think, on this one of a sidewalk or trail
Okay.
connection,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's gonna be a big topo.
Yep, got it.
Any other questions or comments? Chris?
Were any of these changes we made because of the street plan, or were these all budgeted for, and you were planned on all these happening?
These are prepared, yeah, these will just be under, they will fall under engineering costs, just general engineering. Since they're not huge items, like $100,000 items, we'll just place them under engineering,
Okay, very
so.
good. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Would like to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, we have a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkenbeck, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carried.
Next item, consideration of a scope of services agreement with JEO Consulting Group Incorporated to prepare a topographic survey of East Seward Drive.
This is the same thing as the last item. This is in the anticipation of a full rebuild of East Seward from basically where we left off at the dog park, all the way through the S curves out to the city limit.
and that's what this topographical survey is for. This will give Jake what he needs to finalize and do his engineering drawings for construction in 2020 building season.
Yes, John?
Pretty big difference in price. I mean, 3,500 on the last one to 7,700. What's the big difference on price on
Way farther.
Twice
It's
It is.
probably twice or 3 times as far.
that? Okay, that's all it
Yep.
is, just the length?
Yep.
I think there was some discussion too about the entrance to, whether the Ridge Run, the
Yeah.
curve, as part of that.
It's still got a wide width on it in regards to, there's also some areas that you'll need to consider for right-of-way acquisition on East Seward because it's an old county road that was acquired, so there's some elements related there.
So on both entrances?
Pretty much I think all of these topos are just based on how wide do you want it, how many linear feet do you want.
I know.
So,
And we don't get to that second entrance, I don't think, on.
No, we won't. It'll
ours.
be
That'll be
this
the county's responsibility.
by Rogers there.
Well, we'll go around, it goes around, it passes Evergreen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes to the
And
church.
it goes up, yeah, but not all the way to that
Three
entrance,
it goes to the other entrance of Ridge Run is where it stops.
before that.
Yeah, before that, it goes to the church.
Yeah.
There's 3 houses that will be in 3 to 4 on East Seward Street
Yeah,
there.
it's a church.
Are we good then?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Would like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second, please register your votes, please display your votes.
Diane McCarthy, welcome back. Councilman Miller, Singleton, Smith, Hendricks, motion carried.
Next item is consideration of an agreement with Olson to prepare a topographical survey of tax parcel 800217780 and 800040597 west of platted Seward Rail Campus. Greg?
This is a topo essentially of what we refer to as the Heath property that you at the last city council meeting approved to begin the purchase of. This is the area where the substation transmission station will be located and also the main drainage area for the 30-acre plus, well, not just the 30-acre, but basically all of the east half of the rail campus. And so to prepare to finalize all of those drainage elements and to complete the 1-acre site for the substation transmission spot, we'll do a topographical survey of that entire property, and then it'll also prepare us so that when we do plat it, ultimately and lay out all the lots, all that will be taken care of, so.
Any questions or comments on item number 4? If not, I'll still make a motion for approval.
Second.
Did you make the motion? Okay. John, the rest of your votes, please display the votes.
Diane McCarthy, welcome back. Councilman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carried.
Next item, consideration of new and updated job descriptions for the electric department. Greg?
Yeah, we have a number of job descriptions. We, as we created, as we spoke back, and I believe in December or January, in adding the second tier of linemen to make us more competitive and comparable to other surrounding wholesale utilities, and most of the communities that we compare to. We created that job description and at the same time made adjustments to some of the other ones and realized this would be the appropriate time to just look at the whole department, clear the whole department for updated job descriptions. And so we worked with Larry and his crew, and Bonnie did a great job of kind of looking through other communities' job descriptions all the way up and down the board. We created what's now in front of you. I think the main element you're gonna see along with general updates is just looking at the requirement of that journeyman's license for the journeyman lineman position, the line crew chief, and the superintendent. What we'll do is for anyone that's in those positions or moving into those positions that don't have those, so for instance Larry, who's been with us for 40 years almost, doesn't have that, we'll have a waiver placed in for the current position people, and that will take care of that issue. We did take all of these job descriptions to the Personnel, Finance, and Audit Committee that met last week, and we reviewed each one of these and had discussions about how we handle current employees and getting all that taken care of. And so we have direction from them. No changes were made to any of the job descriptions, so I entertain any questions.
And Kelly, do you do these each separate then as other items? It's his fault. Keep changing. Any questions or comments, or would someone like to start making motions?
Do you want to just call it by letter, or do you want the title?
5A,
Move to approve 5A.
you have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, please register your votes, please display the votes.
Diane McCarthy, welcome back. Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
5B, electric line crew chief.
Move approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Item C, electric journeyman lineman.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Item D, electric lineman.
Move to approve.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Item E, meter maintenance utility worker.
Move approved.
Second.
The motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Item F, electric seasonal groundman.
Move to approve.
Second.
Your motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Next we have is, item number 6, consideration of an ordinance updating the comprehensive pay plan reflecting updated electric department job titles. Greg?
It's just an update that corrects some of the job titles. Again, we're reverting back to the electric superintendent. So some of the job titles are updated, and then also, this is kind of the finalization of the electric journeyman lineman, even though we've created that job line clear back in January when we did comparability, adjustments. This will set everything into motion.
And there's no change on the wage lines, it was
Nope.
just the title.
Just titles.
Is there any discussion?
Move approved.
You have a motion?
Second.
Hold on. This is ordinance. Did you introduce the ordinance?
Introduce an ordinance.
Okay, great. The ordinance to provide for annual classification of officers and employees of the city of Seward, Nebraska, to update electric department titles on the classification plan, to provide for longevity pay and payment of part-time employees, to provide for a date such classification and pay ranges of compensation shall become effective, to provide for publication in pamphlet form, to provide for a time when this ordinance shall take effect. The ordinance has been read by title and is designated as ordinance number 2019-08, and the title is hereby approved. I need a motion to dispense with the statutory rule.
So moved.
Second.
The motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Again, this is ordinance number 2019-08. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, again, the question is, shall ordinance number 2019-08 be finally passed and adopted? Please register your vote. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Next, item number 7, consideration of an ordinance approving a lease purchase agreement with Jones Bank for a 2019 Ford Police Interceptor and authorizes the mayor to execute all related documents. Greg?
Yeah, this was a lease purchase of a 2019 Ford Interceptor. I think we used state bid to acquire it. This is a budgeted item. It was planned for lease purchase. We did go out to the local banks as well as through Ford Financing to get quotes on interest rates, and Jones Bank ended up being the one with the lowest rate, so that's who we went with. I can answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Greg? Would like to introduce the ordinance?
I'll introduce the ordinance.
Great.
It's an ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing a lease purchase agreement relating to the purchase of equipment for use by the city of Seward, Nebraska, authorizing the execution of documents with respect to said lease purchase agreement, and providing for the publishing of this ordinance. The ordinance has been read by title and is designated as ordinance number 2019-09, and the title is hereby approved. I need a motion to dispense with statutory rule.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
In favor, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Again, this is ordinance number 2019-09. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, again, the question is, shall ordinance number 2019-09 be finally passed and adopted? Register your vote. Please display the vote. This is our last ordinance for the evening, so only one final motion to make both ordinances a part of the final record.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
And in favor, Wolfenbach, Colden, Miller, Singleton, Smith, Hendricks, motion carried.
Next, we have a review of fire department proposed 10-year capital improvement plan. John, did you want to start this off?
Well, the council is the one that directed us to come back to the council with a 10-year plan, which we did. When you look at the 10-year plan for if anybody has questions, too, let me know, but 2022 is the biggest hit, and that would be if our ladder truck would not pass for recertification. The ladder truck, so many years, has to be inspected, and it has to be certified for the safety aspect, no different than a boom truck for the electric department. So that's why we put the worst case scenario in there for 2022. Probably going to be only probably, if we can get by this by recert, you're looking at probably 7/8 less. That much of a difference. So, but worst case scenario. The other thing is too, we have to keep in mind that the ladder truck, per requirements, has to meet the highest building in this town, and that's why it's 75 feet right now. And that is at Concordia. The only thing we have not tried yet is the new building. And Greg and I talked about that a little bit now, that there might have to be some changes to the parking lot, so we would be able to have access at any time to make sure that we could reach, but we have not did that yet. So if we did not make the 75 feet, reach that building, insurance, we would have to, for insurance reasons, we would have to replace that truck.
Are you talking Dunklo? The STEM building?
Yeah, the new one, by the music hall.
It appears to be about the same height as the music
Yeah.
hall.
But
Doesn't seem to
it's
be
the
higher.
length
Oh.
for the reach.
How close can they get the fire truck
Yes.
to it to
Yeah,
get the
that-
angle to get up?
That's the
Yeah,
issue.
that's a problem.
Yes. So if we can't reach that top of that building, there'll be an insurance issue for the city as well as Concordia.
It's hard to see right now because there's so much stuff
Mhm.
around it, you can't
Yeah.
really tell.
And that's our biggest issue right now. We can't until things come along. So Greg said that, you know, he would have to get with our building inspector and make sure that we have adequate access.
You still would be able to pull in through the parking lot by the old gym
Correct.
and
But-
pull up on the grass right in front.
Remember, you got a truck that has to be stable. You start reaching that ladder at if straight on, you would be okay, but anything time of an angle, that truck could flip, which puts us in a liability issue for firemen. And you don't want to flip a ladder truck.
Wouldn't be my first choice.
No. So- Yeah. Yeah.
So one of our follow-up items needs to be to go over there and start
Right.
coordinating that with Concordia. The other large building that we'll have obviously is also the Schooler project, and making sure that they have adequate parking or fire lane, so that we know that we can reach the top of their building, because they'll have the same issue. They'll be relatively tall.
Yeah, and, right now, it's the building across from the, cafeteria is the tallest building, to the north. We can just get the ladder up to past the roof.
Jonathan?
No, the tone.
Oh, T-Lake, okay.
Yeah, just the, so,
Well, what about this tower in Weller?
yeah, everything else we've had no problem. So, and then also if you go down, the other thing is, that was asked is, for the property we had purchased, there's not a lot of expense for that property. The biggest expense would be concrete and parking lot. And one of the things that also Greg says, maybe we could bring that all into one lump at one time instead of going over a 3-year period. And the reason we have to do that first is because we have a drainage issue on the north side of our fire department now. We've had 3 people this winter fall, and we have a liability issue there as well because we have very bad drainage there. And to take care of a issue that is a safety issue, we would wanna make that parking lot to the north and then, remove that concrete and add another bay where the drainage issue, which would take care of a lot of issues. And then our parking would be to the north, and we don't have
But John, at a bay when I'm looking at what you guys put together here, it's concrete, parking, drive, and dirt work, we're gonna pour concrete and then. Oh, it's up above, it's up above.
If you look at current building,
Okay.
250, and that's why we put it to the 4th year. If we have to spread it out for 3 years to make budgeting better, we would, before we would start construction on that bay. And then that first year for that property, also you'll see there's little, it's not huge expenses, but mainly they're garage doors, so we can use those buildings. And we're hoping the one garage on there that we're paying rent now for storage for the sea graves and the hose cart, that we could actually utilize those 2 buildings. And then we'd save basically almost $3,000 a year. But we gotta put doors on.
Any other questions or comments? Do you want to pick up 380?
I would just note in my instructions to them, in looking at how we monetize this throughout the budgets, as you can see, if you look at the total all categories, it's the last line.
Correct.
It's a little like this, and so we'll need to discuss as we move forward. We'll talk about it in my administrator's report. Want to look at doing things, because obviously if we get deep into the ladder truck, we're gonna be looking at bonding. I mean, that's not something we can cash flow.
Well, and maybe we need to also find out definitively about charging for calls, because if there's a possibility of charging insurance companies for ambulance calls, you know, that's a revenue source that we currently are leaving on the table. Would definitely go a long ways to addressing a lot of these issues.
And that's not out of the question.
Okay. That might be a conversation we wanna have at the same time as this is getting finalized, just so that we can identify that revenue stream and account for it.
The other thing too, a lot of the trucks are over 10 years old, so they're gonna get to a point where they're gonna be a maintenance issue and potential for liability.
And they did, correct, John, you listed all of your
Yes.
units.
Yes,
They're
every
all
one.
on the 10 years. So if
Yeah.
you see one on there, for instance, unit 30,
Yeah.
there is no 10-year replacement on that yet. So they did do what I asked and list everything, so
Yeah.
that we can have a kind of a general guide.
Even the maintenance, you know, you can see our maintenance repair. And that sometimes can spike, because sometimes you have a failure that you're not recognizing.
And John, I do appreciate you guys working hard to pull this together, because it does make it a lot easier to know.
Greg was pushing.
Well, whoever's pushing you, it helps us just to be able to see what that list looks like.
I pushed them.
We wanna make sure we're all on the same page and we know what we're talking about, because that's what we wanna do, is make a decision and be surprised because something else pops up that we didn't know about. Anything else on this one, Greg?
No, I just following up on the conversation that John and I had in regards to the concrete and the paving.
Yeah.
I would prefer to see that be in one lump sum. There's just savings in doing all your concrete work at once if possible. But the other thing is I don't want to be putting down concrete that we subsequently are ripping out to come put in the new bay. So we need to coordinate what that may look like. And then make sure that we don't do wasteful spending within a roughly 4-year period. So that was the only other comment I had made to John when I first looked at it. Otherwise, I think they did a pretty realistic job and spread stuff out, and I think we can make some tinkers as we move through the budget process, but.
And you see there's 5,000 in for design, because we wanna make sure, we don't want another water issue. Because, right, like I said, we have, 3 people that fell during the ice, and we don't want the potential for work comp claims.
Yep.
You wanna discuss 8A then?
Yeah, we have 2 options with 8A. If the council feels the need to just go ahead and give John or the fire department and administration direction on what to do with our property that we own at 246 North 3rd Street, then we should probably go into closed session to do that. And if they feel they just wanna make some general comments about what we wanna do, or if we wanna hold off at this time, it would probably be appropriate now to say that and then come back at it at the next one. But if they feel comfortable going to give him some direction and administration direction on how to move forward on that property. And generally what we're talking about is how to remove the home, whether we demo it or whether we sell it. We've had interested parties that wanna move it, so
Auction.
we could auction,
Yeah.
so we just need to sort out what we wanna do with that.
Have you had bids on what it's gonna take to demo it or anything like that? Have you guys gone that far yet?
I'd estimate, I can tell you, I'd estimate $10,000 to demo. And if we're gonna demo, then we're probably gonna let you guys burn it.
Correct, and we're
Right.
hoping, we could probably reduce it if the city would help, assist with the decommissioning. Hopefully what we would wanna do is what Josh said. And then we can save.
I mean, if we,
Are you guys prepared to discuss in closed session, or do we wanna
Well,
put this
I mean,
on
if you wanna
next
just-
meeting's
If it's a
agenda?
decision as far as which method to use, you could probably do that here.
Yep.
If you're gonna get into numbers, then we need to go back there.
yeah, if we're gonna negotiate directly
But
with
if you're
interested
comfortable,
parties.
like with an auction, or you're comfortable with a demo, then we don't need to. If you're looking at actually authorizing someone to negotiate a price with someone, then that needs to be done in closed session. So it's whatever the council direction you wanna take that.
I guess if we've had multiple interested parties, why not just auction
Okay.
and have it done?
Agreed.
So, I mean, if it's a house that somebody wants, it can be saved. I was recently at a meeting about housing. Let them, move the house.
So I guess, for just sort of
You
clear,
would just direct me
Yeah.
then to take the next steps to have an auction of the property? Is that,
We'll move to direct Kelly to take the next steps to have an auction on the property.
Second.
you good, Kelly? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Just a minute, so I got it. Who was the second?
And John said I had a good idea, so write that.
I got
That in minutes.
The clerk said, what was that?
He didn't believe you. You could understand what he said.
Voting in favor, welcome back, Haldeman, Miller, Singleton, Schmidt, Hendricks, motion carries.
Next, we have the reports, the administrator's report.
Yes, just hit on a few of the highlights. Ed and I will be preparing next week to go to Lincoln to sit in on the flood recovery meetings with NEMA and prepare all the stuff we gotta do, and see what costs we can actually recover. We don't have major damages. We're gonna go out and do a walk this week of the levee now that it's back down to about 2 feet. And so we'll do a full inspection of the levee with Jake and Mel, and then provide that data on to JEO, who did our levee accreditation.
Walking path, I assume, and bridges.
Yep, they've already went out and looked at all that.
Are those good?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying they're all good, but Jake identified some things with some of the smaller bridges on the walking path and things like that, washouts and stuff that we'll need to address. And so, there was some erosion at the golf course under, I think, the big pond draining out to the west. There was some seepage there that kind of went through that culvert and washed it out due to the flooding. And so, we've had Ed go around and take photos of everything that was identified by any department. And so we've gone around and documented those, and everybody's keeping track of their hours, costs, vehicles, equipment, and then we'll go down to Lincoln and prepare things to be able to use the portal to turn in our claims and see where we end up. Luckily though, I would say comparable to almost every other community that was hit by the flood, we ended up in a very good position. So, and that's largely due just to the nature of the quality of our levee and keeping track of that and this community's commitment to the upkeep of that levee. Because that would have been catastrophic if we would have had a breach over the top, or if we would have had a break in the levee that would have probably cost about unknown millions of dollars in damage and potentially harm to people. So we'll go after that and be happy and fortunate that we're in the position that we're in. We will be meeting with the Ridge Run Neighborhood Association at their next meeting to discuss East Seward Street and the plans for that. Talked to a few of the neighbors, received some comments on the 1 and 6 year plan, and so we want to update everybody out there and give them a chance to talk to me and Jake about what our plans are for East Seward, engineering that and then getting it all done next construction season. So that is coming up this month. We have a number of TIF projects moving along that will be coming before you, including Schooler. That'll be the first one up later this month, but then in May we'll have at least 2 more, if not more than that. So be prepared for those applications. And then the last one is, we just finalized the budget calendar this week between me and Nick. And so budget process will begin here in a week or so internally. And we've set the calendar for that, so look for probably starting in July, that we'll start putting together meetings, probably committee meetings. We also talked about how we're moving comparability this time back, so that it falls in line with the budget now, rather than in December. So I will be doing our comparability comparisons in July and June. And then also we'll have the discussion of the COLA at the same time, so all these things just hit with the budget year, and they're not flexing throughout the year, as was recommended by the Personnel, Finance, and Audit Committee. And then speaking of the Personnel, Finance, and Audit Committee, they did meet last week. We discussed a number of issues in relation to the handbook, overtime things, a whole bunch of different items that will be coming before you in kind of a group package, so we don't have to amend the handbook like 15 different times with a new handbook each time. So we'll put those together based on their recommendations, and that will include some of the changes we talked about with budget.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, can you go to your votes? Please display the votes.
Diane Garber, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Smith, Hendricks, motion carries.
Any future requests for council agenda items or administrative action? Yes.
Just an update, and it doesn't have to be next time, an update on what Jake has been doing regarding looking at traffic and pedestrian traffic around the middle school and the neighborhoods up around Star and Maple and the new construction. And we had one other resident request, extending that over a little bit to Langworthy. Jake knows about it.
Oh, is it in regards to a crossing or stop
No,
condition?
just general kid traffic.
Okay.
Any other items? Seeing none, and announcement of upcoming events, and I will remind the council, we have a photo at our next meeting, April 16th, so 6:45, be here a little early, 6:45, so we can take pictures. I know, it's exciting times we live in. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mayor. Thursday, April 18th, we have our annual business anniversary luncheon through the Chamber of Commerce. We'd celebrate businesses actually all across the county at their 5-year increments. And so we have over 40 businesses that we're celebrating with this year, so we'd love for you to join us over the noon hour on Thursday the 18th. We of course have our annual spring cleanup day. Kiwanis is taking the lead on that this year on Saturday, April 27th, and we're providing kind of a secondary support from our office to get the word out. But they're taking the lead and rallying the troops per se to do that annual cleanup. So I would encourage you to tell your constituents about that to help clean up town and really the county at large.
And who's given money also to support that?
Yes, there's some funding from the county commissioners, and then also there's another grant that came through. We don't have the hazardous waste grant that we had in the past, but we actually got some good news pretty recently that we should potentially have that for next year.
The landfill is giving you money,
Of the landfill?
is to give money to the client.
Yes, okay, thank you. And then lastly, the ag banquet, of course, had to be rescheduled. So we're looking at Monday, April 29th for that at the Ag Pavilion. And just want to give a kudos to this community and the county at large for the cleanup efforts that happened this last Saturday. 175 volunteers to help clean it up. So thanks to the community for that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Diane Garber, Wolfenbeck, Alderman Miller, Singleton, Smith, Hendricks, motion carries.
Thank you all.